Hey guys, welcome back to another video in this 2021 NFL Draft Retrospective. Today we're going to be looking at the AFC West, and as our same little disclaimer that we always have, we are not professionals. We did not watch game film on every single one of these players. We did a lot of stat sheet picking, and occasionally we can have some misses because of that. So, if that does happen, let us know in the comments, give us some thoughts, give us what we messed up on, but bear with us. And we're going to go ahead and start this one off with the Denver Broncos.
Coming straight into it in the first round at pick number 9, we have Patrick Surtain, the second corner. We've seen this a lot in the past few years since 2021. Just corners going early and panning out for the most part. Stingley's the only one that's kind of up in the air, I'd say. But Patrick Surtain is definitely a bona fide guy. He's kind of got a high allowance of yards and TDs, but he's also corner one covering wide receiver ones, so he's getting the high amount of like target share. I believe he's been around over 90 past couple years, but he's also just really productive with all of the targets he sees, holding people under 60% completion both of his years, and as a rookie, I believe it was something insane like 50. He's doing really good. His QBR allowed as a rookie was just 64, and I feel like it's, even though the high yard to TD ratio, quote unquote high, because it's not like Trayvon Diggs high. It's just, oh, I'm a corner one covering wide receiver ones. I think he's still very, very good, and there's really no argument to be made against an A plus in my opinion, especially when you account for his interceptions and his pass breakups, where he's had 14 as a rookie and 10 this past year.
Yeah, so
What were your thoughts?
if you take a look back at the NFC South video when we went over the Panthers, my initial grade on J.C. Horn was an A plus because he was so stellar on the field. We came down plenty from that because of injury. I think Pat Surtain being picked a pick after him and being able to stay on the field for every single game, if not almost every single game, just
Yeah, as a rookie, he played in 16 games, so he missed one game as a rookie, but since he started all 17 last year.
yeah. He was all pro, first team all pro in 2022. Like, he's absolutely nuts. I don't think A plus is a stretch at all for him. I think that occasionally you can have guys where you're like, do they really deserve it? But Surtain definitely does. When you're in the conversation to be like top 2 corners in the NFL going into your third season, that's pretty good. It's like Sauce Gardner levels of good, except Sauce
Yeah,
is in conversations to be CB1 going into his second season. So little different there, but besides the point.
which I'd argue Sertan probably was around that conversation, just not as like hardcore. Like people are hardcore, like Sauce number one, while Sertan was more like there's an argument to be made, but no
Yeah,
one was like claiming he was.
yeah. And I think he is absolutely going to be like Champ Bailey 2.0 on that defense. So
Yeah,
definitely going A
all right.
plus on
So
there.
A plus, locking that in, and then moving forward, round two, pick 35, top of the round two, they got a running back, Javonte Williams. Do you want to start off with him?
Yeah, he's tough. We've been really harsh on injury so far, and he missed almost the entire season last year. But
Yeah,
when he has been on the field, he's been extremely good. I mentioned in the AFC East video that I really liked watching him in college with Michael Carter and like that 2 running back just pounding at UNC. It was really fun to watch, and he continued to be really fun to watch in the NFL, and he was clearly the better of the two. Um, and I think that if he can stay healthy, this grade will go up. And I think I graded him pretty harshly because I haven't been as harsh on injuries in the past, so I kind of wanted to crank it up a little bit. Uh, I had a B on him just because he's so early in the second round. He was the third pick of the second round, and he
hmm
missed an entire season with injury. And he's a running back, which the positional value isn't as high on them anywhere in the draft, really. Because, I mean, the Falcons last year, they showed us they can be running back by committee and average the exact same amount of rushing yards per game as the Titans with Derrick Henry. So,
yeah. As a rookie, he didn't start, but he played in every game, and he was rotational, like 50% snaps. So it's going to be hard to kind of project forward how it's going to look when he's not so much the second back. that only gets some snaps. He's more so going to be the main guy that maybe as the third down back substitute out for. He had a good rookie year, but it wasn't anything like outlandishly good. It wasn't like the Najee kind of like yards, but he had yards per carry that were way better with 4.4 as a rookie. So that plus the injury that only had him play in 4 games last year, it was hard for me to go high on it after just the like 1 year production, and the 1 year was pretty productive, but I went B minus on him.
I'm
So
gonna
do you want to go down or hold for the
no,
B?
I'm gonna hold for the B, and I think so. I'm gonna kind of push back on myself a little bit. I think that another reason that he could be kind of argued as not as good is because when he finally did see that almost 100% snap share in year two is when he got hurt, and so it could be like an issue of when he gets all the carries, he runs too hard, he gets hurt, he puts himself in dangerous situations. It could also have just been an unlucky run where he stepped on the ground a little bit weird, planted wrong, and tore his ACL. You know, like that does happen. So it's kind of up in the air. And because it's up in the air, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he has averaged over 4 yards a carry both years, before injury year two and just the entire year one. And that is the sweet spot for running backs because that keeps you on track for if you run literally every single play, you will get first downs before you run out of downs. Above 4 yards a carry is a really good position to be in. So
Yeah, I went B minus just because I didn't want to have him too much over Najee because he only had the 1 year of production, and so I didn't want him to be like 2 letter grades above Najee, despite like I do like the position that he was drafted at more, and I do like him more just as like the yards per carry and productiveness, while not just being fed the ball every single play as the offensive game plan for some reason. But I'll move up to B with you, just because it's still that kind of like projection ahead where I hope he bounces back from the ACL, whereas some people suffer the ACL and never return to form.
another thing I do want to point out, we had Najee graded at a B minus, and I think that the value is way better for Javonte. I would take Javonte over Najee in a heartbeat. And the fact that Jalen Warren is challenging Najee for his position right now as RB1 on the Steelers is
Steelers, yep.
kind of nuts. Like, Javonte is very clearly better than Najee, so I don't want to grade him the same, even with the injury. Moving on to the third round pick, 98, they got Quinn Meinerz. I want to say he was out of Wisconsin Whitewater, D2 school. So big name talked up in the draft process. I just remember the name and obviously the gut. He's shifted around the O-line a little bit from center to guard, and he's been really good wherever he's been. He, in both seasons, has had 2 sacks allowed and 3 penalties, but switching positions, going from rookie to sophomore, and, you know, as you do, you get better. He has gotten better, because having 2 sacks allowed and 3 penalties as a center isn't that great, but having 2 sacks allowed and 3 penalties as a guard is better than that as a center. And then he's also had an increased snap count up over 100 snaps from first year to second year, and he has had the same solid performance. I think that that's great value in the third, no matter what position on the O-line he's playing, and I think that we can harken back to Robert Hainsey and the grade we gave him, and so I had Meinerz at an A minus.
So for Quinn, I gave him just a B plus. I think just the snap count is what kind of kept me out of the A range for that. He still hasn't played in that many games. He only had 15 as a rookie, 13 as a second-year player, and I don't like the snap count for the position of O-line, just kind of the dropping in and out and not having the most consistent time starting. So I just went B minus just to keep him out of the A's. I don't think Robert Hainsey should have been an A either, but I think that Meinerz was a B plus.
Should we just go back and say Robert Hainsey is not an A minus right now and just change that grade?
I think it's fair to say, yeah, we'll say B plus.
All right, we'll go B plus.
Grading of that.
All right, B plus on Robert Hainsey. I'm changing it right now in the official documents, and then we'll go with the same thing for Quinn Meinerz.
Official documents.
I think he needs to play another year at guard, and we'll see how he does from there. I do like the position drafting, though. Like, I like almost 100 and you're getting a starting O-lineman. Like, that's great to me.
Yeah.
But we'll move on. We'll go 7 picks later, on to the same round, round 3, pick 105, Baron Browning. He started out as an inside linebacker his rookie season and was mediocre at best, and then he shifted to outside linebacker and came off the edge, and he got 5 sacks, 8 TFLs, had a pick, and that's a kind of Joe Tryon Shoyinka type position where you're edge rusher, you're also dropping back in coverage. And his tackle numbers did dip in year 2, but moving from inside linebacker from off ball to an on ball linebacker and lining up outside, that happens. Any outside linebacker has less tackles than an inside linebacker with the same number of starts. So I like him. I like the draft position, getting a solid edge rusher late in the 3rd round. So I gave him a B+.
I was a lot less high on him, but I do see myself moving up from the grade I have here. He kind of had a little bit of injury, kind of had some weird growing pains with the shift from inside to outside. So my expectations weren't high when looking at it. And he's had 18 pressures for the team. He was 3rd in tackles as a rookie, and then he was 3rd in sacks in his 2nd year when he moved to off ball. But I think the fact that he's versatile and has kind of adjusted to the defense's needs is a bonus. I just wish he was more productive at those 2 different roles, but I do see a B for him. I'm just not so sure I feel he is as big as a contributor as Quinn Meinerz is, and with them being picked so similarly, that I would just go straight B on Browning as opposed to the B+.
I can see that. Another thing I want to point out is that he started, I believe, post Bradley Chubb trade, and that was when he started getting a lot of his stats. So first 5 weeks of the year, he actually had 6 QB hits, but only 1.5 sacks, and that was all from the 5th game. And then after he started, he had another few sacks, another larger amount of tackles, and he actually made an impact. Obviously, the 3 weeks where he was injured and inactive kind of hurt a little bit, but I think going forward without Bradley Chubb on that team, there is an opening at the edge rusher position, and so I think he'll step into that. But for now, I can definitely see just a flat B on him.
He does have the starting spot moving forward, so we'll agree on that grade then.
Moving on, the Broncos did not have a 4th round pick after having the last pick of the 3rd round, but in round 5 they picked up Caden Sterns, who started his career as a DB and then moved full-time to safety. He's another member of that pipeline that we've talked about a little bit, where you've got a DB moving to safety in year 2 and then taking kind of a step up. As a side note, Kobe Bryant is doing that right now for the Seahawks, and I'm looking forward to seeing him be the next member of that. He's not quite as good as like Derek Forrest, but he's still pretty good in the 5th round. And he'll be backing up Kareem Jackson, but Kareem Jackson's 34, so he's not going to be starting for long. He's kind of getting towards the end of his career, and having a young DB who is looking promising at safety, learning under a veteran, is never a bad thing, and I think that is deserving of a B.
Yeah, so Caden kind of had a rough sophomore season because he just had the 5 games. He got injured and he got hip surgery, and his season was ended. He started in 4 of those 5 games that he played in year 2, and that already was almost more snaps than he had as a rookie. And statistically, as a rookie, he had 5 pass breakups, 2 sacks, and 2 interceptions. And then in year 2, he had 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and that was just through the 5 games and 4 starts. I like his production out of the 5th round, and the injury kind of has me cautious because it was just such a big injury that ended the season and required surgery. And then the new backup role that's kind of been delegated for him moving forward, I didn't want to go too high on him, so I had him at a C+, B-, kind of literally put both because I wasn't so sure where I wanted to lean. With you leaning B, do you want to go B- on that?
Well, so his backup role isn't new. Kareem Jackson's been on the Broncos for 4 years. Like
he was starting last season. He got injured. Now he's currently listed at backup. Is more so what I meant is new.
Yeah, I think that the current listing at backup is not going to be there for long, especially given that he did start when he was healthy. So I think he'll come back, and by the regular season, maybe by like week 3, he'll be the starting safety over Kareem Jackson. So I'm not that worried about it.
Because, yeah, he has only seen the 580 snaps as a member of the defense.
But in 580 snaps, he's got 4 picks, 2 each year,
he's
and that's
been
switching
productive.
positions.
So
Like,
we'll agree on B there, and then speed running. Round 5, pick 164, Jamar Johnson, DB. He saw 38 special team snaps and was cut prior to year 2. F. Round 6, 219, Seth Williams, wide receiver. He had one 34-yard catch as a Bronco, and then he has been on the Jaguars practice squad. F. And then moving into round 7, we had pick 237, Kary Vincent Jr., a corner as well, with 52 snaps as a rookie, and he was traded to the Eagles. And want to take over for Jonathan Cooper here.
Jonathan Cooper. As a 7th rounder, it is a great pick, man. 14 starts, 30 appearances through 2 seasons, 4.5 sacks, 86 total tackles, 6 TFLs, 14 QB hits. Those are all career stats, not season stats. Randy Gregory is currently ahead of him on the depth chart, but I have him in a kind of similar situation to Caden Sterns, where there's an aging veteran ahead of him on the depth chart, and he is a younger guy with not much money invested into him because he's a late round pick, and he's showing a lot of promise. So I do really like him, and I think that him seeing the field and kind of splitting snaps with Randy Gregory is something that's kind of probably going to happen. And just because of the value in the 7th, I had him at a B+.
We can agree there quite easily. The value out of the 7th round plus the 40% snap share that he's currently sitting at the past couple of years, I think it was pretty easy to say that with his production, he's a B+, despite not really starting moving forward. He's a 7th rounder, so if he was starting, it might even be more. But right now, with his good little rotational come in as a relief kind of guy, definitely a B+. Round off the Broncos here, we have round 7, pick 253, Marquiss Spencer, D-end. He had 21 snaps for the team and has just been a practice squatter around the league. Another hard F.
Overall, for the Broncos, I did like this draft. I feel like having the players like Jamar Johnson and Seth Williams, Kary Vincent, Marquiss Spencer, I feel like that's just going to happen. Like it always does. Every team has, well, almost every team has them, with a couple very small exceptions. Initially, I think I had most of these guys graded a little bit higher than you did, so my final grade as an A- is probably going to go down a little bit, but I think that every pick that wasn't kind of immediate cut was a very solid pick who's going to make an impact on this team, and the ones that aren't currently making an impact will in the future, with Caden Sterns and Jonathan Cooper. But Pat Surtain is top 2 corner in the league. Javonte Williams, if he stays healthy, is going to be probably a top 10 running back in the league. Quinn Meinerz is classic. Baron Browning is a pretty good edge rusher who's going to be stepping up into a bigger role with Bradley Chubb leaving. And then, the other guys that kind of suck are just a foregone conclusion at this point. I had him at an A-. I think probably more accurate is a B+ after the adjusting of the grades.
Yes, so I had them at a B+. They walked away with a lot. With some of them, you got Surtain, top-end starter of the whole league. You got some, I would say, top 16 starters, where you got Javonte and you got Quinn in that kind of boat. And then Browning, Sterns, and Cooper are kind of just the good depth pieces, where they're currently depth, but they're good depth. And so when they move and they become starters, they might not be like a top 15 starter at that position, but they're still going to be good. So I had them at that B+.
And another thing I do want to say about Caden Sterns and Jonathan Cooper, there are some other teams that have drafted players that are solid talents and good depth, but the difference is these guys are backing up veterans, 30-plus-year-old veterans, whereas the other teams may have had somebody who's 25, 26 entering their prime, and they've drafted a decent backup for them. These are solid backups to guys that are not going to be in the league for that much longer. So the future looking forward for the Broncos is a little bit brighter than the future looking forward for somebody who took, a backup safety, and they had a stacked safety room that was all 26 years old and everything. So we'll move on to the Raiders, who had the bright idea of continuing their first-round excellence, taking Alex Leatherwood at pick 17. My notes on him are simply, come on.
Yeah. Um, he was cut after a rookie year, so it's not even like they're like, oh, we spent a first on him. We have to stick it out for a bit. No, they straight up cut him. Third most penalized tackle as a rookie, allowed the second most sacks in the league as a rookie, and then they're like, yeah, bye bye. F.
He was barely good enough to start on the Bears' offensive line, if that tells you anything. So we don't want to spend too much time talking about him. We'll move on into the second round. Pick 43. They took Tre'von Moehrig. Very good safety. He is not a DB to safety. He's just a straight up safety. But he had 11 passes defended, 55 total tackles in each season, 2 TFLs this past year in fewer games. He's been an absolute baller for the Raiders, and I really, really like him.
I'll just add some of the stats out there. Out of the second round, he's played 2,000 snaps for the team. He has allowed a 58% completion percentage as year one. Granted, great assault, he's a safety. It's not like he's a lockdown man-to-man DB, and those are straight-up numbers. But in year two, it did jump up to around 69%. So there was a little bit of regression there, but I mean, there's not much to say other than he's a good safety. He's been their safety. He's more yards, TDs than as a rookie, but again, it's a safety. It could be there's less help as a corner and they're bracketing someone. There's so many different reasons why a safety would allow more year to year. It's not so much just like, oh, he got worse. So I still like him, and I feel like my original grade here is a little low at a B.
I had him at a B plus, and I just want to point out the Raiders DB room is just god awful. So yeah, if you're a help side safety, you're gonna let up some completions because your corner sucks. And another thing that I wanted to clear up, because I didn't write it great in my notes: 11 passes defended total, 55 tackles each year for 110 total, which I thought was pretty cool. He's had 55 exactly in year one and year two, but he moved from free safety to just safety. I don't know why they distinguished that, but
Maybe
yeah.
it's game change. Yeah, who knows? Under the new coach.
I do like a B plus on him. He was picked after Javon Holland, who I also really liked, and we gave Javon Holland an A minus.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
But
he was
he's
as
not as good as
impactful,
Javon
so,
Holland. Yeah,
yeah.
Moehrig, very good. Not quite Javon Holland's level. Picked like 7 picks later. So
Yeah,
I think B plus is pretty
I'll
good.
agree with you on the B plus. Yeah.
Cool. Moving on into the third round, pick 79, Malcolm Koonce, D end. He has not started a game yet, but he did appear in all 17, the best abilities availability. He's currently projected to be the 4th left side D end on the Raiders depth chart after they drafted Tyree Wilson, and it seems like his relevancy is coming to an end before it even started. Because he's still on the team, I had a D on him. I know you like going D minus on the guys that are still on the team but didn't do anything, so.
Well, that's where you'd be wrong because in just 116 snaps on defense, he had 12 tackles, 2 sacks, and 2 TFLs, and I like that production, so I actually went D plus.
Damn. Okay, D plus sounds great. In the future, though, he ain't doing anything.
No, nothing else.
He
Nothing
probably
coming up.
so. Typically, teams don't carry 4 DNs on each side going into the season. They might carry 4 DNs total, and so I would not be shocked if we heard his name as one of the cuts in after week 3 of preseason.
As a future practice squatter, yeah.
Yeah,
But
practice
he
squad of the
also had
Bears.
278 snaps with the special teams through his first 2 years, so he might make the roster simply because of special teams.
That's
work.
true. He could be a special teamer. One pick later, great pick later, Divine Deablo, another candidate for the all-name team. He's actually a really solid linebacker when he's on the field. He was on pace for 157 combined tackles this past season, which would have been 10th league-wide. But his season was cut short after being placed on IR after his 8th game. So future's bright right now. It kind of sucks that he got injured, but I like him.
At the end of the year, he was 4th on the team in tackles, despite only having those 8 games of seeing the field, which it's the Raiders, but also that's still just good inherently. He's 1 pick later, so just production produced more than Malcolm did, and so while I usually am a little harsh for injury, I went C plus, just kind of not wanting to give him that hard of a knock considering his really good pace that he was on in year 2 before his injury. Don't want to kind of like say just flat C, but we'll see where you were on your grade.
I think I was a little generous on him. I do like the tackle totals. I like the step he took year 1 to 2. He went from having 45 total tackles to 74 total tackles in less than half the games, but had a few more starts. So he's moving up. He is currently the starting weak side linebacker, so he will be getting those snaps. I actually had a B plus on him. I really like the value of linebackers in the 3rd round who put up good numbers, and I think that looking forward, he is definitely there. I don't want to leave the B range. I feel like down to a C plus is really harsh for somebody who is on pace to be top 10 in the league for tackles. And if he continues that going forward, I think it'll be really easy to say that he's in the B range.
I feel like the on pace could change pretty drastically if he were to play still. Like, with the injury, it's still just kind of up in the air if he would have hit that. But I suppose since you don't want to leave the B range, I'll move up from C plus to B minus because it's not that big of a jump. So I'll match you to that B range.
I'll
B minus.
I'll put a B minus on it, but I ain't happy about it. We'll move on to round 4, pick 143, Tyree Gillespie, a safety. I gave him an F. He was traded for a conditional 7th round pick, so I could see giving him anything better, but 4th round pick traded for a 7th is not a good look.
Yeah, you're losing value at that point. Moving into round 5, pick 167, we had Nate Hobbs, DB. He's played 1,500 snaps for the defense. He kind of does have a high completion percentage allowed, where he's got a career of 78% and 1,000 yards, 6 TDs allowed. He kind of seems hit or miss, but his snap count out of the 5th round does kind of give me another, give him a little value boost to me. So what were your thoughts on him?
So I'm just going to read my notes because I think I wrote it pretty well. He's a defensive starter that the Raiders drafted in the 5th round, but that's where the good ends. He is a bottom-tier defender. He allowed 82% of his targets to be completed in year 1, 75% in year 2. When he cut down on the percentage, he allowed a higher passer rating. So he allowed a 92.1 passer rating in year 1, a 120.2 passer rating in year 2. And he is a projected starter this upcoming season, but when Brandon Facyson is who you're competing with, it's not as impressive to say that you're a starter. And I'll harken back to Tre'von Moehrig and saying that he doesn't have help in the DB room when he doesn't have help in the DB room. I had a C plus on him just because he has been a starter, but he's been a starter in one of the worst DB rooms in the NFL. So,
yeah, C plus I think is generous, but I also gave it to him. So I think we both agreed on that. So we'll lock it in there.
We'll lock in the C plus. The 5th round, getting starts out of it's fine. I don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they're not good starts, they're starts, man. And then in the 7th round, pick 230, they took Jimmy Morissey, an O lineman, thrown on the practice squad, signed by the Texans. He's been on the Texans ever since. I gave that an F.
Agreed. So when we look at this as a full broad spectrum, we have an F in the 1st round, and that immediately to me just tanks the grade. They really only have a projection of how good Deablo could be, and then Moehrig is good with absolutely no other help on that back end. My word-for-word notes on the overall grade of the team is that Mike Mayock fucking sucked at drafting, and that they've only retained they've only retained half of the players from it, and they've only had moderate impact, or we're more so projecting better impact in the future. So I went D for this draft, kind of one of the lower grades we've given to teams. But where were you at?
I kind of forgot to factor in the fact that Leatherwood was the 1st round pick. I had a C minus on them, and I said the only thing keeping them out of the D territory is that Moehrig is good and Deablo is probably going to be good. Everything else was mediocre at best, and half the draft isn't on the team anymore. I think that D plus is probably more where I'm sitting, just because I do like Moehrig, I do like Deablo, but I could definitely
Yeah,
see.
you
a
raised
D.
my grades on both of them, so I'll move up to the D plus.
Sick.
But yeah, Alex Leatherwood starting off your draft class, not great.
Woo, Alex. Woo. All right, we'll go on to the Chiefs. This is a fun one, an absolute thriller
Yes,
from start
very
to
much.
finish. I know you're a pretty big Chiefs fan, so instead of letting you take this one, I'm going to start it off. And in the
Fantastic.
second round, pick 58, they took Nick Bolton. He had a huge jump from year 1 to 2. He went from 112 total tackles, which is amazing, to 180, which is really amazing. He had 70 solo tackles, which is also phenomenal, and then went up to 108. He doubled his QB hits from 3 to 6. He fell in TFLs from 11 to 9, but his presence was still felt. You can see it with the QB hits and everything. Um, a spirited performance in the Super Bowl also helped out because I did watch that, and he was very fun to watch in the Super Bowl. I think that if that second fumble recovery had counted, probably Super Bowl MVP right there.
For sure.
The man is active. He's successful. He's very fun to watch. I had a pretty easy A on him. I think that matching Pete Werner's grade is a pretty good marking stick for him.
Everything you just said, I do want to make a little note that the 180 tackles in year 2 was second most in the NFL, and that the Super Bowl tape is all that you really have to look. If you're like, oh, I wonder how good this Nick Bolton guy is, put on the Super Bowl versus the Eagles, watch the first half, and you're gonna pretty quickly figure out what kind of style of football he plays and how good he is. And he does that basically every game of the past 2 seasons, so easy A for me as well.
Yeah. So we'll lock in an A on him if we both agree on that. And then we'll move on to arguably top 5 player in the NFL, Creed Humphrey. Absolute banger of a pick. Absolute banger of a pick. I love Josh Myers. One pick earlier makes this pick look real good. And yeah, second to last pick of the second round, grabbing an all-pro center. Not the highest positional value on the field, but when you're getting the best center in the league late in the second round, you can't really say that's anything less than an A plus. I think that getting all pro in the second round anywhere is really good. So to have that on an O line protecting, Pat Mahomes, that's pretty solid.
Yeah. Here I say that Creed Humphrey is in the top 3 center conversation in the league, arguably top 1, and that he is the reason why the interior line of the Chiefs is so good, and that they really revamped immediately after the loss to the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. I don't know why it decided to freeze up and robot throughout the actual recording. Here is my post-recording voice. Oh, we need to get better at the O-line. This pick almost single-handedly did it. He's so good for the team. And so I agreed with A plus on that. And yeah, just not much to be said over in terms of arguing for that A plus.
If you disagree with an A plus being given to a center, see our argument right here. I want you to put a picture of Creed Humphrey on the screen there, please, in editing. Just Creed. All right, I can send you the picture I want you to use right now.
Big boy Creed. Nice.
Yes.
Right,
I wonder if there's a picture of Creed Humphrey as a meatball. This one. This is the one. I'll send you a picture of it right now. I just want the face. You can crop out most of everything.
I'll put
except
him
for
on
the
a
face.
meatball. That's what
Oh yeah, yeah, do that.
Here's our argument, and it's just him superimposed on a
meatball. Yeah. Creed ball. I sent it on text.
Okay. Do you want to kick off the next one while I wait to
Creed Humphrey ball.
Jumping into round 4, pick 144, Joshua Ando at the end for the team. He has 46 defensive snaps and was a healthy scratch for all of 2022, and he has no stats. So, D- for still being on the team.
Agreed. That's what I had on him as well. I'm still laughing about Creed Humphrey ball. Going on round 5, pick 162, we got Noah Gray. I feel like every single Chiefs game that I watched, Noah Gray had a catch for 30 yards. He never made an impact anywhere else. Always had a catch for 30 yards. Travis Kelce is going to outshine him. It's just going to happen. But he's young, and he's learning from the best, and he's getting that one catch for 30 yards in every single game. And so I had a B on him.
Wow. Phew. I'm glad I'm dodging these bias allegations because I also had a B on him.
Noah Gray's great, man. Saw him in person.
Yeah, Noah Gray is great. He's our QB sneak extraordinaire. And while he's kind of, screwed by being behind Kelce, he's good. So you got to give him that B, especially because he isn't like pure. He pass catches, so we actually have stats to look at and be like, oh, he's a B.
Moving on further in the 5th round, pick 181, we got Cornell Powell, the second miss from the Chiefs. I basically said copy-paste from Kendo, third-string wide receiver, most likely going to be a practice squatter this year. It kind of sucks that there's a receiver that can't make an inroad on that Chiefs weak receiver room, because it is probably one of the weaker ones in the NFL. Obviously, Kadarius Toney, very talented, very good, but very injury-prone, and so if you're a receiver that just can't get starts and can't get stats on a team with Patrick Mahomes, it's not a very good look. I had him at a D- because he's still with the team.
Yep, D-, career practice squatter for the team, but won't go into the Fs thanks to being rostered. Now to round off this class in round 6, pick 226, Trey Smith, a guard, and he slipped this far because of I believe a heart issue that was at the top of all medical boards for teams. That's the biggest steal that they managed to come away with thanks to that. They felt okay. They did their due diligence and they moved forward on him, and he's panned out with that heart issue not being an issue at all these first 2 years. And he's a starter. He's one of the core of the interior O-line that has been so great for them. And him coupled with Creed in the same draft class was his Christmas again, getting that O-line completely redone in one offseason. His impact as a 6th round pick, I have him at an A, trying to fight the bias of getting him an A+ as well, but just an A I had on him.
So I absolutely cannot give him an A+ because of the penalties. He had 9 in his first year, 4 in his second year. He cut down on them, very good. Penalties are expected as a rookie, especially when you're starting all 17 games and 16 in year 2. But I mean, he's still not perfect. So, like, he's a very good offensive lineman. He is very good, extremely good value in the 6th round, but he's not the, Talanoa Hufanga greatest player to ever exist out of the 5th round type thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to give him the same grade as Creed. So that's the A differentiation on the A to plus.
I also had an A on him. He is another part of the reason that the Chiefs are still dominant. They were able to fix that O-line, like you said, in one offseason. And this draft was one of the better ones, and they didn't have a first-round pick. So this just goes to show what you can do if you have decent management picking or making your selections. And we've seen teams with multiple first-round picks have a worse draft than this. So, yeah. I think overall I had an A on them. I think a couple misses is a foregone conclusion. And for the Chiefs to get 3 top-tier starters and a future star in Noah Gray without a first-round pick is just a masterclass. And I think this is the draft to look at where you're like, okay, that's it. That's the one, Yeah.
I also gave them the A. They fixed their O-line, which had been basically a huge problem that was just exposed. They did it in this draft, and then they didn't really have good linebackers for a good while moving into this draft, and Nick Bolton has solidified that core for them. So you walk away with basically 2 perfect, groups, and then you get Noah Gray, just a good little cherry on top, kind of getting those 30-yard catches every single game. So, yeah, I think A is good. I don't think we were ever going to go through these teams and hand out an A+. I don't think we will ever, honestly. If we kept doing this year in, year out, it would be very difficult to get an A+. So A, pretty good.
If they took what's his name, Talanoa Hufanga, if they took him in the 4th round, and then 181, Elijah Mitchell. If they took Elijah Mitchell, that'd be an A+ draft. So that's our requirements for an A+ draft would be Chiefs draft, and then sub out Talanoa Hufanga and Elijah Mitchell, as the picks. So
Yeah.
that's how difficult it is to get an A+. Moving on to the Chargers. First round, pick 13, they took an offensive tackle, Rashawn Slater, to protect their franchise quarterback. He is great when he's on the field. First team All-Conference, second team All-Pro, Pro Bowler, fourth in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting. But he got injured in Week 3 of 2022, which ended his season. He's a big reason that Herbert has the time to do his thing, and Herbert had nearly 700 yards and a 7-touchdown fall-off when losing Slater in 2022. Some of that probably can be attributed to the wide receiver core being made of glass, but Rashawn Slater was definitely a big factor as well. I'm not going to say my grade until you do, because I feel like I did the thing where I don't care about injuries.
He was penalized 7 times, lost 5 sacks. He's really, really good. And the injury is just kept us to only having the one really good year. I wanted to give him the J.C. Horn treatment where, okay, he's shown that he's really good, and it's only for a year. So I went into the B+, just wanted to kind of drop him out of the A's simply because of the fact that he didn't have a year or two, per se.
I had an A- on him. I think I didn't factor in the injury as much as I should have, so I think a B+ is fine for him. And I also think that with the new offensive coordinator, and if he comes back and he performs well and is a great offensive tackle, that offense with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson and Austin Eckler and whoever the hell their tight end is, it doesn't really matter, is just going to be a fun one to watch.
Moving forward, we got round 2, pick 47, Asante Samuel Jr. You talk about him actually a lot, so would you like to kick him off?
Yeah, I talk about him a lot because I recognize the name. I was a big Patriots fan. I was a bandwagon when they went undefeated and lost in the Super Bowl, and have been a fan ever since. So I was around for Asante Samuel's time there, as well as playing Madden 08 a ton in my childhood when Asante Samuel was on the team, and so it's just a name I know. So in a draft where there's 3 or 4 sons of DBs or sons of NFL players as DBs in this draft, and they're all really good, of course I'm going to gravitate to the one that I know most, which is Asante Samuel. He took a step up in year 2 from year 1. He allowed 62% of his targets to be caught as a rookie and knocked that down to 55% as a sophomore, with more targets and more snaps taken. His touchdowns allowed went up, but again, more targets, more snaps taken, kind of expected to have that, which is not as much of a DB stat as completion percentage or passer rating is. He missed 5 games his rookie season. He didn't miss any his second season, and 2 games he had limited snaps, but no games completely missed. Even though he hasn't been absolutely perfect, he's been very good. I had a B+ on him.
I'm glad we can agree right off the gate. I also had a B+ on him. He's had the 11 pass breakups each year, and he does kind of have like a little high on allowance of some things, but I think that he's a top player for the team.
Anything under 60% completion percentage allowed is a really good number, and he had under that his sophomore season. So, but yeah, B+ on him, lock that in. And then moving forward, next round 3, pick 77, we got Josh Palmer. When Keenan and Mike Williams decided to become glass, he was kind of thrust into that starting role, and he did okay. It helps when you have a really talented QB throwing you the ball, but he maintained the exact same catch percentage in both years, down to the decimal place. He had 67.3% as his catch percentage. Consistency is kind of the story with him, and with an aging Keenan Allen, aging Mike Williams, and a young Quentin Johnston, he might find some starts here and there, but it seems like the receiving core is kind of shifting without like a mediocre period, if that makes sense. Like it's going to go from Mike Williams and Keenan Allen being your 1 and 2 to Quentin Johnston and whoever else they take being your 1 and 2. I don't know if Josh Palmer will ever find that consistent starting time, but he's been consistent. So I had a C+ on him just because he wasn't phenomenal and he didn't do enough to earn himself any playing time over those two. And they did still draft Quentin Johnston now, so kind of he's kind of proven that he's not going to be that wide receiver 1 after Keenan and Mike leave, but he was solid.
Palmer, when two other receivers decided to become glass. He became the second on the team for yards. When you compare Palmer to other wide receivers drafted before him, I think that he stands out as better, despite the fact that he has Justin Herbert at quarterback. I'm not going to hold that against him because I gave the other wide receivers benefit of the doubt when they had a bad passing game. So I'm not going to knock him for having a good quarterback. So I just had him on that slight little bump above where you had him. I had him at a B minus, but with projection forward, it is a little tough with how we don't know how healthy the wide receiver 1 and 2 for that team are going to be coming up. So we don't know if he's going to get that many opportunities to see the field coming forward. So I'll give a C plus just because of the uncertainty. I'll match you with that grade.
Cool. And that's a theme. If y'all have watched all of our videos, I look into the future a little bit, and Elijah grades the first 2 seasons pretty hard, just that. So you get a nice little. I mean, if you disagree with our grades, you can agree with one of us because we'll probably be matching. But yeah, we'll move on. 20 picks later, Tre McKitty at pick 79. Shut the fuck up. Tight end simply has not been good through 2 years. He's the tight end 3 on the depth chart behind Gerald Everett and Donald Parham. He's not even that good for a third tight end, or for a third-round tight end. He's not even that good for a third-string tight end. I had a D- on him just because of the lack of everything.
Interesting. So I gave him a lot more benefit of the doubt because I don't know how good he is at blocking.
Fair.
But per PFF, out of the draft, he was a pass-catching talent primarily. So hovering around tight end 3 to 4 and only having 117 yards off of 16 receptions. I will drop my grade from C- to flat D, but again, I don't want to be harsh and go B- or D- like I do with some real bottom of the barrel players, because I don't know how good he is at blocking.
So he ranked 68th out of 72 qualified tight ends in run blocking grade, and yeah. As a receiver, he was last place out of 49 eligible tight ends in his receiving grade.
I googled Tre McKitty, and what came up was a Chargers forum post that said that they can safely call Tre McKitty a bust. So,
okay, we going with D minus? All right, cool. Round 4, pick 118, got Chris Rumph, D end. Fairly mediocre rotational edge rusher playing majority of snaps on special teams. He does have 3 sacks and 4 TFLs through 2 years. They're not great numbers, but he's doing something. So there is that.
Only thing I had on note of him is that through his 2 years, he's had 15 pressures, and I felt like that was worth something, just considering his snap count and his 4th round selection. But he still hasn't really seen the field that much, so I just went C-.
I went with a C. I'll move down to a C-. I think I was thinking it was later in the draft, not the 4th round.
Moving forward, we got round 5, pick 159. We got Brenden Jaimes.
Say that again.
Brenden Jaimes.
Brenden Jaimes.
Yeah, Brenden Jaimes. Offensive line. He has 3 snaps for the offense, and it's not very good. Sorry, D-.
So I just want to point out his PFF grade. In year 2, he had a whopping 26.9. That may be the lowest grade I've ever seen. We'll go with the D- on him.
All right, we got a little kooky, a little crazy with this Chargers.
Oh my god, dude! It's not even late. This feels like it's a 2 a.m. recording, and it's not. It's 5 p.m.
Sure. Compose.
Creed Humphrey ball.
Forward, we got. Moving forward, round 6, pick 185. Nick Niemann, linebacker. He has played 47 snaps for the defense, but for some astounding number of 668 snaps on special teams. He's a special teams contributor out of the 6th round. I gave him a D+.
Yeah, so I also gave him a D plus because of the same thing. I, as a Patriots fan, I'm a big fan of special teams contributors. Matthew Slater is an absolute baller, and he is basically special teams only. Actually, looking up right now to see his career snap counts on Pro Football Reference, that he has played 236 offensive snaps. He has played three defensive snaps. He has played 3,191 special teams snaps. Yeah, Matthew Slater's basically the best special teams player of all time. You can cut that whole thing out. I was just curious about Matthew Slater's stats.
All right, D plus agreed.
D plus agreed. We'll move on. Round 6, pick 198, we got Larry Rountree. I believe he was cut 2 days ago. He's actually on the Texans now. So, cut, signed by the Texans.
D minus 2.5.
Yeah, I had him at a D minus. He had 2.2 yards per carry on 49 attempts through 2 years. And then he got cut a couple days ago. Moving on, one round later, round 7, pick 241, we got Mark Webb, a DB. He has done nothing, but is currently the backup free safety. So he might do something as a DB to free safety pipeline, but as of now, he has not. I gave him a D minus.
Okay.
Overall, for the Chargers, they started off pretty hot, taking a bona fide starter offensive tackle, a really good DB, and then did nothing else. This draft class was carried by Rashawn and Asante, and Josh Palmer is not terrible, so I'll give him that as well. But both Rashawn and Asante have their issues, so they're not perfect. But I had a C plus on them. I think so. I moved down on my Rashawn Slater grade. I didn't move at all on my Josh Palmer grade, actually. So I think I'm down to probably a C on them, just because that first round pick moving down half a grade is more impactful than any other pick moving down half a grade.
So I had them at a C plus as well. Although I did learn something negative about Tre McKitty, so we're going to flat C on that.
All right, sounds good to me. Yeah, poor Tre McKitty, poor bud. Overall, we'll do a quick little division overview real quick. Initially, we graded the Broncos, and we had them at a B+. Top picks of Pat Surtain, Quinn Meinerz, Baron Browning, Caden Sterns, Jonathan Cooper. A lot of potential with this group, and then a lot of also proven talent with Pat Surtain, with Quinn Meinerz, with a healthy Javonte. And then after them, we moved on to the Raiders, where we gave them a D+. They had notable picks of Alex Leatherwood, and on the good side, they had notable picks of Tre'von Moehrig and Divine Deablo. Moehrig, very good safety. Deablo, potentially very good linebacker. Everybody else kind of a whiff there.
Yeah, so of course I want to take the Chiefs here. They got an A. We already highlighted what minor improvements could happen to make it an A+, but they walked away with Trey Smith out of the 6th round, freed Humphrey and Nick, kind of revitalizing their O-line after a tough loss in the Super Bowl, and then giving themselves a cornerstone linebacker moving forward. A grade for them, which is tied for our best of this series. Then rounding it off, we got the Chargers here, and the Chargers walked away with Slater, Samuel, and Palmer kind of on the lower end of those top tier, but they got carried by the early picks they had in the draft. No real steals late in the draft. And so we gave them just a flat C, because it's kind of goes how a draft is expected to go, kind of worsening quality as you go on throughout the draft.
I think that this was one of the more fun divisions to grade. It had more of the notable picks. You got, Pat Surtain, Alex Leatherwood, notable for the wrong reasons, but and then Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, very good players. Rashawn Slater and Asante Samuel, very interesting players. So just kind of an overall very interesting division to grade. I think that is just about going to do it. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter. My Twitter is right below me. It's going to be at FTP Anderson.
Below me, FTP Ja. Follow the official Twitter for the franchise tagged account, tagged franchise. And I think that's about all. We have our Discord in the description. I have a cat that wants to make a cameo, and the wraps.
All right. Take it easy, guys.
Deuces.